Welcome everyone, and thank you for joining me. You are listening to the account with a news summary for day 395 of the war in Ukraine. Today is the 31st anniversary of the creation of the Security Service of Ukraine. Valery Zaluzhny, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, has thanked and praised the Security Service forces, saying their operations have already become legendary. Today I have two articles to point out. All other updates are grouped into the usual situation inside Ukraine, including President Zelensky's comments on the counteroffensive and what is lacking, the occupied territories, with an update regarding the Kakhovka misinformation, Russia and Belarus, containing updates regarding Russian plans for further operations and nuclear weapons being deployed in Belarus, and international developments. Before we start though, the flashpoints along the front. The Ukrainian Deputy Minister of Defense Hanna Maliar called on the media and mill bloggers to stay quiet about any counteroffensives by Ukrainian forces until the results are achieved and official sources release the relevant information. Bakhmut. The situation remains critical as fighting continues along the front line. Russia's offensive seems to be slowing down as assessed by Western intelligence, but it is disputed by Ukrainian sources whether it is due to the exhaustion of the Russian army or the work of Ukrainian defenders. Personally, I believe it is a good mix of both, to be honest. According to Valery Zaluzhny, Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, the situation in Bakhmut is stabilizing because of the tremendous efforts by the defenders. Avdiivka. Heavy fighting continues around Avdiivka, especially in the area of Kamyanka. Russia is throwing a lot of manpower and equipment at the settlement. Now for the first article, titled Russian Tracks. Putin's Geheimer Convoy. German news outlet T-Online published an investigative report regarding the Nordstream sabotage. According to the findings, Russian warships were present in the area of the gas pipelines a few days before the blasts occurred there. The report believes the ships involved had the necessary equipment to plant explosive devices. The article is available in German and English. Please check it out. And the second article, titled Stolen Valor. The US volunteers in Ukraine who lie, waste and bicker. In accordance with the latest controversy surrounding volunteers in Ukraine, the New York Times published an article about the topic. Please check it out. And look at all the minor updates out of Ukraine. The spokesman of the Air Force of the Armed Forces of Ukraine, Yurii Ihnat, commented on Russia using guided bombs in the latest attacks. According to him, Russia has a large stockpile of aerial bombs which can be upgraded to guided bombs by simply adding wings and GPS. This is also cheaper and faster than missile production. Ukrainian volunteers are looking into acquiring British FV-101 Scorpion light tanks for the Ukrainian army. The Scorpion has aluminium armor and a 76mm semi-automatic cannon. President Volodymyr Zelensky said in an interview with the Japanese newspaper Yomiuri that the armed forces of Ukraine cannot yet start a counteroffensive, which was planned for the spring, because now the defense forces need more weapons. Next up, the latest regarding the situation in the occupied territories. The International Atomic Energy Agency Director General Rafael Grossi will conduct a second visit to the Russian-occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in southeastern Ukraine next week. According to the Melitopol mayor Ivan Fedorov, Russian authorities and collaborators in occupied Melitopol are starting to panic about rumors of a Ukrainian counteroffensive and are threatening residents. Fedorov alleged that collaborators were instructed on evacuation plans towards Crimea. A large rotation of Russian military personnel in Kakhovka was what caused misinformation about Russia abandoning the city. As a reminder, 2 days ago, the General Staff of Ukraine initially misreported in its evening update that Russia had abandoned Nova Kakhovka before retracting the statement. Moving on to the news updates from Russia and Belarus. The Kremlin has dialed back plans for a further offensive in Ukraine this spring after failing to gain much ground and will focus on blunting a new push by Kyiv's forces expected to begin soon. Russia is planning to recruit up to 400,000 soldiers this year, but some officials said the goal is unrealistic. The Ukrainska Pravda article has a nice summary for those who cannot access the Bloomberg article. Today, there were 2 Caliber cruise missile carriers in the Black Sea, with a total firing capacity of up to 8 missiles. Russian Deputy Secretary of the Security Council Dmitry Medvedev believes that Russians should download and distribute pirated copies of works on the internet that are not available to them due to sanctions. Dmitry Peskov, press secretary of the President of the Russian Federation, has said he agrees with the views expressed by Dmitry Medvedev. The advisor to the head of the Ukrainian President's office, Mikhailo Podolyak, commented on the statement saying, "If you're a thief, you're always a thief. Russia always steals. It doesn't create and invent, but robs and steals." The Ukrainian Defense Minister Oleksiy Reznikov commented ironically on statements made by Russian propagandists that Russia could easily equip an armored division with T-34 tanks while the enemy has nothing left. According to Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner PMC, already 5,000 recruited prisoners have been released from service. Moscow and Minsk have agreed to deploy tactical nuclear weapons on the territory of Belarus. This was confirmed by Russian President Vladimir Putin in an interview with journalist Pavel Zarubin. Russian President Vladimir Putin said that Russia is planning to modernize 1,600 tanks available in its stock over the next 3 years, as well as ramp up tank production. And to wrap up the news segment, the international developments. US senators from both parties urged US President Joe Biden's administration to share evidence of Russian war crimes with the International Criminal Court. The Polish Prime Minister stated in an interview that Poland will drastically increase its ammunition production capacity in order to be able to provide adequate supplies to Ukraine. And now for the intelligence report segment, starting with the UK Ministry of Defense. Russia's assault on the Donbas town of Bakhmut has largely stalled. This is likely primarily a result of extreme attrition of the Russian force. Ukraine has also suffered heavy casualties during its defense. The Russian situation has also likely been made worse by tensions between the Russian Ministry of Defense and Wagner Group, both of whom contribute troops in the sector. Russia has likely shifted its operational focus towards Avdiivka, south of Bakhmut, and to the Kremenna-Svatove sector in the north, areas where Russia likely only aspires to stabilize its front line. This suggests an overall return to a more defensive operational design after inconclusive results from its attempts to conduct a general offensive since January 2023. A look at the latest assessment by the Institute for the Study of War. Voices in the Russian information space are gearing up for an expected Ukrainian counteroffensive, the Institute wrote. One prominent military blogger claimed Ukraine may have plans for an attack on Russia's Belgorod Oblast, while another said that Ukraine will likely try to launch the counteroffensive before the Russian defense industrial base has the capacity to increase production. Russian Security Council Deputy Head Dmitry Medvedev was cited as having said on March 24th that the Russian General Staff is aware Kyiv is preparing for offensive operations and is considering potential responses to the counteroffensive. Yevgeny Prigozhin, head of the Wagner PMC, also claimed on March 23rd that he knows of plans for an extensive Ukrainian counteroffensive. The Russian information space appears to be responding to the slowdown of Russian operations and potential for Ukraine to regain the initiative with substantial anxiety. The institute observed that Russia's spring offensive appears to be nearing its end, and in order to launch any new offensive operations, Russia would need to commit a significant number of forces that do not appear to exist at the current time. Regarding another topic, the researchers reported that the Russian 155th Marine Brigade has been destroyed and reconstituted 8 times since the beginning of the full-scale war. The Russian military leadership was criticized for continuing to attack the city of Vuhledar, Donetsk Oblast, with ineffective frontal attacks using human wave-style attacks. Russian troops are unable to maintain any significant rate of advance anywhere on the front line using human wave attacks. 2 additional minor topics were assessed. Crimean occupation head Sergei Aksionov has reportedly formed a Wagner Group-affiliated private military company, PMC, in occupied Crimea. Russian President Vladimir Putin held a meeting with the Russian Security Council, likely as part of his effort to portray himself as a present and effective wartime leader. And to wrap up the report, the evening update by the General Staff of Ukraine. The enemy is concentrating its main efforts on conducting offensive actions in the Liman, Bakhmut, Avdiivka, and Marinka directions. Thanks to professional and coordinated actions, our defenders repelled more than 50 enemy attacks in the indicated directions. In the Liman direction, during the day, the enemy conducted unsuccessful offensive actions in the area of the settlements of Sinkivka, Kremena, Bilohorivka, and Vimka. In the direction of Bakhmut, the enemy continues its assault on the city of Bakhmut, which is held by our defenders, as well as in the Pretechine area of the Donetsk region. In the Avdiivka and Marinka directions, the enemy carried out offensive actions in the direction of Keramik, Tonenke, Pervomaiske, Marinka settlements of the Donetsk region. The enemy was not successful. The enemy continues to conduct defensive actions in the Zaporizhia and Kherson directions. Russian occupiers continue to rob the population in the temporarily occupied territory of the Kherson Oblast. In particular, in the village of Krasne Kakhovsky district, Russian mercenaries are actively taking private cars with trailers and trucks into which they load the looted property of local residents. And that concludes today's report. If you're interested in any of the details to any article I mentioned, you can find links to them in the description as usual. If you enjoyed the report and found it informative, please consider sharing it with others and giving me a like. I hope you will join me again tomorrow. Thank you for tuning in and have a great day. You were listening to The Account. Slava Ukraini.